This is Viterbi Voices, your chance to hear stories about research, classes, student life, and more.
Directly from our students, faculty, and other members of our engineering community. All right here at the USC Viterbi School of Engineering.
Welcome back into Viterbi Voices, another special faculty roundtable episode. My name is Paul Ledesma, Director of Undergraduate Admission here at the USC Viterbi School of Engineering.
And my name is Audrey Roberts. I'm a senior studying mechanical engineering here at USC.
Today's special faculty roundtable episode is all about the Department of Aerospace and Mechanical Engineering. We've got some fantastic faculty here for you, some very enthusiastic faculty to talk about your department, Audrey, all about aerospace and mechanical engineering. Are you excited or what?
Yeah, I am. I think I've listened to our previous roundtable conversations with this department, and I always learn something new. So I think there's a lot to be gained here for people who are new to learning about the department and the majors, or people who have been here for a while.
So stick around. We're going to get going into it right now to learn all about aerospace and mechanical engineering with some faculty from our department. Thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to the USC Viterbi School of Engineering Faculty Roundtable for the Aerospace and Mechanical Engineering Department. My name is Paul Ledesma. I am the Director of Undergraduate Admission at the USC Viterbi School of Engineering, but I won't be doing a lot of talking today. The whole point today is to get to know some of the faculty in the department, and it looks like we got a great group of students here that are going to be able to get to know everything about this place and get to know our faculty and what's going on in the department. The ground rules for today. What we're going to do is we're going to have a conversation to begin with where I'll moderate that discussion. We'll get to hear from Dr. Rani, Dr. Uranga, and Dr. Spedding about their background, about the department, about the discipline, about the curriculum. And then towards the latter half of the session, I'm going to open up for Q&A. But for the time being, please hold your questions. Okay, so please hold your questions for the time being. We cannot monitor those right now, but hold your questions. We'll have plenty of time toward the end to get to as many questions as possible. And let's get started with our conversation. So first off, let's do introductions, and we'll go in that order because that's just who's on my screen here. We'll go with Dr. Rani first, then Dr. Uranga, and then Dr. Spedding.
Hi, I'm Paul Rani. How can I be
You're
muted?
up. You're up. Yeah, there you go.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I'm Paul Rani. I'm chair of Department of Aerospace and Mechanical Engineering. And behind me is my executive assistant, Cavalier, and his pal in the background is Hercules. And my background is in both mechanical and aerospace. My undergraduate degree is in mechanical. My graduate degrees are both in aerospace. I've done research, I think, on both sides of the house. I've had experiments flown on 3 space shuttle missions. I was a backup crew member for 2 of those. I did get to fly, but I went through all of the training. I also do work in automotive engines. My main area of research is actually combustion. You know how a lot of kids go through the stage, they like to make things blow up or burn or explode? Well, I never really grew out of that, and now I get to make a living doing that. And we have an outstanding faculty in aerospace mechanical engineering. We have a couple of them here to join in this conversation. And so over to Alejandra.
Hi, I'm Alejandro Uranga. I'm actually on the other side, more on the aerospace part. I joined USC 4 years ago. I've been happy ever since. And I do research on aircraft design. So my thing is not things that blow up, things that actually fly. And so happy to be here, happy to answer questions.
Dr. Spedding.
Well, hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining. 278 of you. That's a pretty good number. And I think it reflects well on the fact that aerospace and mechanical engineering is, in fact, the coolest discipline in engineering, which, of course, is the most sensible degree to take in this day and age. So you've made the right choice. And now let's explain a little bit why that is. First, I'll talk about something that I know about, which is me. And so I'm a hybrid. I've come from a number of different directions. Right now, like all the full-time faculty, I spend my time doing research and teaching. The research I do is in fluid mechanics. Air is a fluid, water is a fluid, and I investigate how it is that fluids flow. And one obvious application of that is, how does airflow over aircraft wings? How does airflow over aircraft bodies? And in particular, I'm interested in the airflow over small-scale flying devices. And these include unmanned air vehicles and surveillance craft, which just so happen to overlap in size with birds and bats and things like that. And so we wonder how those work. And in fact, part of my hybridicity, part of my hybrid background comes from my zoology degree originally. And so I look forward to cases where engineering can be mixed up with understanding the natural world in a quantitative way and in a way that can help you do design. That's what's cool about engineering. And the other part of the research that I spend a lot of time doing is looking at the hydrodynamics of submarines under the water surface. And as you can probably tell by now, I could talk about that at length. The other thing I do is teach, of course, and this semester, like many fall semesters, I'm teaching the Introduction to Aerospace Engineering class, which, of course, is the coolest class in the entire curriculum. And
the fight has already begun. The fight has already begun.
I'm picking a fight with my fellow panelists here, but it's where and the whole point here is that in your undergraduate degree, you will be exposed to things that are engineering and things that are discipline specific. And so your life will not be just a mass of physics and chemistry and calculus classes. And as you can tell, I could talk about that for a very long time too. Anyway, that's my position in a nutshell, and I look forward to discussion.
Just so we have the opportunity to compare and help them give their pitch, Dr. Uranga, Dr. Rani, what classes do you teach either in total or currently?
So currently I teach something that's called Introduction to Computational Fluid Dynamics. So it's fluids again, air, water, but solved on a computer. So basically the equations of motion, I'm sure you've all heard about Newton's laws, are known, but the solutions are not necessarily simple. And so you can actually find solutions on a computer. And that's what I'm teaching right now. If that seems a little far away, in the spring semester, I teach aerodynamics, which is also an extremely cool class. You'll have to wait third or fourth year to get there, but exciting times throughout year 1, 2, 3, 4 anyway. And that's what I teach.
Yeah, and I teach the other coolest class in the department. I teach Introduction to Mechanical Engineering. This is what we're working on now, are these robot cars. And the students are going to work together in groups. And we've laid out a couple of obstacle courses for them and see who can get through the courses the best. One is kind of a slalom course, and the other is like a figure-8 speed course where accuracy is not the goal, but just speed. And then we also let them do a freestyle routine. You know, just like with the equestrian routines, you have compulsories and you have freestyles, and that's what we'll have in this class. And then the second project, so that's the first of the 2 group projects. The second of the 2 group projects is building a 3D printed bridge and then testing it to failure. If there's time later, I can show you a little video of that, but I won't take the time to do that now. And also, the course has 2 other parts to it besides these 2 projects. One is the sort of the lecture classroom part, which I do usually from the barn here. And what you learn is sort of some very basics of engineering about units and scrutinizing your results. And then you learn a number of introductions to a number of topics, including fluid mechanics, solid mechanics, statics, heat transfer, thermodynamics, energy systems, little snippets of all those that will feed into courses that you learn later. Just give you the 30,000-foot top view before you take the full-blown course in those areas. I call it life skills for mechanical engineers. You could also call it boot camp for mechanical engineers. And like boot camp, you may or may not like your instructor, you may or may not like what you were taught, but when you're down in the trenches there being shot at, you're glad you had that experience. Then the third part of the course is learning SolidWorks, or other computer-aided design programs. Many of you have already done some of that. And so I try to combine those 3 aspects of the course, the project, the SolidWorks, and the lecture part of the course to try to make a cohesive introduction to mechanical engineering, which gives you a feel for what mechanical engineering will be like if you continue in it for the next 3.5 years after that. It's not a weed-in course. It's not a weed-out course. It's designed to give you an accurate understanding of what will happen if you continue in the program. And most of you decide to stay in engineering, and many of you in mechanical engineering. Some transfer other departments in mechanical engineering, which is fine too. Or if you decide that, hey, this is just not what I want to do for the next 3.5 years, then you have many escape routes from there. So that's the course that I teach every year. Even though I'm department chair now, this is the one course I really want to teach. And I think Jeff was the same way as well when he was department chair previously. And then I also teach upper division courses in automotive engines and gas turbines, as well as graduate courses in combustion.
That's great. Thank you. And I think that's actually a lot of the detail to another question that I wanted to ask everyone. And I think this is a rather simple question to get started with, but a complicated answer, which is what is aerospace engineering? What is mechanical engineering? And what's the difference between the two? And it's open-ended, so whoever wants to jump in here.
If I may take the chair's prerogative, I'll let Alejandra and Jeff continue. But the way I'll just talk about mechanical engineering. The way I define mechanical engineering is, if it doesn't involve things that fly, in which case aerospace engineers will handle it, or if it doesn't involve life forms, in which case biological or biomedical engineers will handle it, doesn't involve chemical reactions, in which case chemical engineers will deal with it, doesn't involve electrons, in which case electrical engineers will deal with it, doesn't involve materials or structures of matter, in which case materials engineers will deal with it, then a mechanical engineer will handle it. However, it doesn't include things that fly, things that live, structures of materials, electrons, etc. A mechanical engineer will also be involved. I like to say it's the broadest of all engineering fields. I know every department says that, but in this case, it's really true. Because the reason I say that in a rather, perhaps arrogant way, is that our core subjects really permeate all engineering disciplines. Things about structures, forces and structures, materials, fluid flow, heat transfer, thermal systems. That's important in all engineered systems. So we tend to be, we provide a service to many of these other engineering disciplines. And with that, I'll hand it over to Alejandra and Jeff to talk about aerospace engineering.
I guess the aerospace engineering, I agree with Paul, it's about things that tend to fly or that fly. And typically we think aerodynamics or fluids or other disciplines like that, but it also involves, similar to mechanical engineering, structures. You can't fly something without the structure. It needs propulsion because there's nothing with infinite energy that will just sustain air. It involves things like controls, stability, human factors, pilots, pretty much anything you can think of. And so it's just kind of an application of the engineering part that is very general. And I think that's also why you have to spend some time learning the general calculus and physics so that you can actually play the fun game later on. So it's aerospace has many applications also. Maybe not as many, maybe Jeff can help me out here.
No, of course, I agree with everybody. And I'd like to just follow up on a point that Paul made about not quite growing up or growing out of obsession with certain things. And isn't it cool when something flies? I've never tired of saying that or thinking that as I watch things either engineered or natural systems in flight. And that's it. And I find it cool and fun. And then in order to think further about it, you need to be quantitative and you need to be trained and you need to practice. And in comes the physics and the calculus and all the things that Alejandra was mentioning. And the second thing that she mentioned also, it's one thing to get up in the air, it's another to control yourself when you're up there. Suddenly, your feet are off the ground, your wheels are off the ground, you've got no supports. And so there are huge and interesting questions about stability and control that arise in aerospace engineering that are way beyond what you normally have to deal with. So those things are fun, and they distinguish, if you like, aerospace engineering from mechanical engineering. Together, the two, I think I completely agree, of course, with my esteemed colleagues. It's the coolest department and set of topics ever. And it's the broadest based, most useful hardcore engineering program. That's what it is. And so you do this because you can. You do this because you're fairly good at math and fairly good at physics. You don't have to be brilliant, you just have to be pretty good. And then it provides a platform for jumping off into all kinds of places.
Thank you for that. I want to bring up one kind of tangential question, and it's a little unfair, but it's about another department, because I think it's fair for students to understand that there's another department in the Viterbi School called astronautical engineering. And so aerospace, mechanical, astronautical, and a lot of engineering schools have different departments and different names for things that sound the same. So can we help distinguish aerospace and mechanical from astronautical? And then of course, we'll also give information when the astronautical event is going on down the road.
I can take a stab at that if that's okay. The astronautical engineering department starts where wings don't work, and we stop when wings don't work. And it's very common, much more common, to find these two departments merged into astro departments and so on. Quite unusual to have them separate. And many people ask, well, what's the difference, and what should I choose, and how do I know which is the one for me? And there are two answers to that question. Number one is they're almost the same, and there are very many shared courses between aerospace engineering and astronautical engineering. So from Paul Ronnie's 30,000-foot view, it doesn't matter. And the second answer to that is you just do whatever you have fun thinking about. So we all do long, arduous homeworks with differential equations and nasty pieces of calculus and things like that. What would you like to be thinking about while you're doing that? A satellite, a rocket, an aircraft? Why are you here in the first place? Which of those things do you have fun thinking about? That's all you have to think about, because if you do well in your classes, that's the key thing, and you graduate doing well, you can go anywhere.
And I think I would add something to that is, don't worry about the marketability of the degree or something like that. Just find what you like. If you find yourself looking up in the air whenever you hear something flying, then maybe you're an aerospace engineer. If you find yourself undoing motors and systems on the car, then it's just mechanical. And so it's just go for what you like and take it. That's the most important part. You can only be very good at something if you enjoy it. So just follow your gut.
Thank you.
And come to aerospace and mechanical engineering.
Follow your gut and go to the coolest department out there.
The coolest department.
And I'll add one thing onto that, and that is, a lot of times when you go out into industry, which is where my next question is going, these students with all of these different undergraduate degrees work side by side, because as Dr. Spetty mentioned, it's a lot of the same coursework and skill sets that you're attaining. Can we talk a little bit about that, this idea of industry, internships, and full-time positions, of where students have gone to and types of companies that end up recruiting and hiring aerospace mechanical engineers? And if you can, help us understand, what do they do?
So maybe before that, even I think what we intend to teach you is how to think. And in that sense, those are transferable skills. And that's also why you have a lot of flexibility in terms of what you want to work in explicitly. So if you're an aerospace or mechanical engineer, those have that you don't have to work on cars or on aircraft. It's just a matter of you having the flexibility and the ability to think and to find solutions to real world problems, which will make you an engineer. And there's the industry part, which I'm going to let that to Paul or Chuck to answer. The kind of,
okay,
I'm just saying you can do anything after this, but maybe we can be a little more specific.
Yeah, I agree completely with Alejandra. In fact, I would say if some prospective employer is that narrow-minded that they say, well, you have a background in, aerospace engineering, but not astronautical engineering, and that's really the astronautical engineers, I'd say, is that really the kind of, short-sighted company that you want to work for? But I also like to say that, I just smile a little bit every time we see a SpaceX launch and they do something extraordinary. I think between Jeff and myself, we all kind of sit back and smile a little bit, and yeah, they did a great thing. And a very large percentage of the people who made that happen took their first engineering courses from one of us. So a lot of our graduates, I don't know if it's the largest number, but a very large number of our graduates do go to SpaceX, the other aerospace companies in the area, the Boeings, the Northrop Grummons. Some go to the automotive industry, some go into consulting. I've had students, go into, like I said, I think quite a few lately have gone into consulting, some into, of course, graduate school, a number into, I have some that now work at JPL. So we have, the center of the world's aerospace industry right here. So there are infinite opportunities for that. We're not like Detroit, for example, in the area of automotive engineering, but still there is some automotive engineering in the area, and we do send a lot of our students to that. I can think of one of my students actually works for like the #1 aerospace fastener company. You don't think of fasteners as being that big a thing, but it's pretty important. You want that aircraft to stay together. So he's like a quality control engineer for a major aircraft fastener company. Jeff, you want to add
Let's
to
also
that?
not forget one of our alumni designed the fountains at the Bellagio in Las Vegas.
Mm. Oh, and at one of our faculty, yeah, and one of our faculty designed Kelly Slater's wave pool.
That's right. That's right. All the fluid dynamics involved in that, which is lots of work. The perfect wave, nonstop, 365 days, 24 hours a day. Let's talk a little bit about that curriculum. Maybe give a little bit more of that larger view of like what would a student come to expect to learn as they make their way through the undergraduate curriculum in aerospace and mechanical engineering. And keep in mind, our audience is pretty much high school students and some parents, and so they're at that precipice of this. They've just started taking calculus, or maybe they've taken a year of calculus, or maybe they've taken a year of physics. So they're trying to turn that corner as to where this is all going. And can you show them a little bit more, peek them around that corner a little bit more?
Okay, I would say, first thing I would say is that a lot of what we do is what I would consider applied physics, applied math, applied chemistry. So a lot of the things you've learned, and you just learned the basics, as Cavalier knows very well, that you've learned a lot of these basics, but you're probably anxious to say, well, what can I do with all this information now that I have it? And we're going to show you what you can do with that information. In your first year, you'll take one of the introductory courses, either mine or Jeff's or one of the other engineering departments. You'll also take your basic math, chemistry, and physics. You'll take some of your general education courses. And then starting usually in your sophomore year, you kind of take the core engineering subjects. I mentioned a few of them, like statics, dynamics, strength of materials, fluid mechanics, control systems, thermodynamics, heat transfer. You take these core subjects, and then you'll eventually put that all together in your senior, or also in your junior year. You'll take the course that I say, it's number 341, is always either preceded or followed by an expletive. Not because it isn't a great course, because it's a lot of work, but it's basically, like to call it experimental engineering. And that's something I think is fairly unique about what we do. I think we have, other engineering departments do have this, but I think we have a very rigorous year-long course in actually learning how to develop these lab skills and actually measure things and build things, and then look at the results and try to determine, well, what's causing what to happen. Then your senior year, you put all this together into a senior design project. There's also a senior project lab as well as a design project where you take all the skills that you've developed over the past 3 or 3.5 years into sort of a penultimate experience within engineering. I know, Jeff, you want to add to that?
No, I think I think that our curriculum has an extremely good balance between the practical skills and the theoretical material. When I look back on it, I think it's particularly heavy on both, if that's possible. And of course, I think that the third-year class that we invented, the Mechoptronics class, is another of the best classes ever. And it's gained some notoriety in the local engineering circles as being one that proves that a student is able to function out in the engineering world. And so we try to produce students who can not just function but lead in the engineering world. We don't want you to be designing a doorknob for 10 years, but designing an aircraft or some other means of transport or something more glamorous. And so that's what we try to do, and that circles back to Alejandra's point about how we try to have classes where the overall benefit is the way in which you think, the way in which you make quantitative and precise answers to sometimes ill-formulated questions.
And just to add to that, I think we see the math and the calculus, the physics and so on as tools that we can apply. So they're not an end goal, but they're something that you need in order to reach the next step, and which becomes the engineering part, the mechatronics class that Jeff was mentioning, and the senior design classes. And so it's kind of it's a journey through the simples and the tools and gathering everything you need, and then you go and do the putting it all together. And I think the aerospace and mechanical engineering has that side of this. It's a system, and it's something that has to work together. It's not just one piece of it. It's the whole part. And that's why you need to learn to think in terms of disciplines, but also to think in terms of an overall system and how to put it all together, which is where these higher level classes end up teaching you. And you say, oh, that's why I had to learn this physics and this calculus and so on. So as long as you enjoy the journey from beginning to end, you'll be successful.
All right.
If I could add just a couple of things to that. One is you'll get a lab experience virtually every semester if you decide to accept US. That's assuming we're back in regular classes again by the time you come to USC. So that sounds great, and the students like it, and the parents like it. About the 4th or 5th week of classes, you realize, whoa, these lab courses are a lot of work. So be careful of what you wish for. I mean, yes, it's an important experience. We wouldn't give it up for anything. And I think in hindsight, the students would, but it is a lot of work. You put in a lot of hours into either laboratory classes, as well as design classes, as well as computer programming classes. So just keep that in mind. It's not, but we're not just one of these places where it's all just sort of lecture, homework, and exam type classes. We just don't feel that you get enough experience doing that is valuable out there in the real world. The other thing I would say is in the senior projects lab, what we do at the end of that is that we invite the local industry to come and have them, that we set up displays so each group can show off what they've done and what they've learned and how they got to that point. And we have the people from local industry come and take a look at it. And of course, then they'll pull me aside or pull one of the faculty aside and say, hey, what about this project? Or what about that student? Should we interview him or her, that type of thing. So we like this sort of interaction with our local industry because we have this huge resource in the area. We might as well take advantage of it.
Thank you for that. And with that, we've already gotten a lot, so I want to open it up to Q&A. A number of you were holding back your questions, and I appreciate that. But we got a number of questions I'm going to try to dive into here, and I'll moderate those and hand them out to you all and see if we can get some stuff going. Now, there are a number of questions that are still trying to understand aerospace, mechanical, and astronautical. And I think that your answer was great before, but I think what everyone wants to be told is what to do. and so they're saying like, well, what should I do? And one of the other thing is if I want to get a degree in astronautical engineering, will I still be taking courses in aerospace mechanical engineering? Which the answer is yes. And if I want to go into missiles or rockets, should I do astro or aero? So is there anything else we can help elaborate to students? And I think the main thing to reiterate is do what you want, and we can't tell you what you want, but how do we help high school students understand that?
Well, I would say, first thing I would say is any of these 100 level courses that you take will satisfy the requirement. So if you take AME 101, for example, my course, but afterwards you decide that you'd rather be involved in rockets, you want to be in the astronautics department, you can still do that. That I would also say, just as kind of a rough rule of thumb, and especially because these 100 level courses kind of give you an opportunity to sort of get your feet wet without, getting your whole body wet. So I would say at the freshman level, take the course that just kind of seems, between sort of rockets, aircraft, or vehicles on the ground, or also robotics. Another big part of mechanical engineering is robotics. If those sort of things interest you the most, pick the one that seems to interest you the most, and then take the 100 level class in that. By the end of the first semester, you'll have some friends from the other departments or the other sec part of AME, mechanical versus aerospace, and you'll know people in astronautics as well. So just talk to them and see if it seems like what they're doing is cooler than what you're doing, then you should probably switch over to that. But we give you that flexibility here.
Yeah. So I guess we're not answering the question, but what we're saying is you don't have to choose now and be committed to it forever, but you'll see what it's like and then you can decide. And either one, you can't go wrong. It's just.
I agree.
Let me take a stab at it. Here's my version. If you like rockets, do astro. If you like planes, do aero. If you just like engineering in general, do mechanical. There you go.
Yeah, I sometimes describe it, and help me if this is correct or everything you want to add into it. It's kind of like a nesting doll, and that mechanical engineering is things with moving parts, and aerospace engineering is things that move, and astronautical engineering is things outside of the Earth's atmosphere. And they're all involved and intertwined.
Sure. Yes.
There you go. And I know that doesn't help you all, right? That doesn't help you say like, what's the right one? And I think the other thing I'll add on to this is that engineering, and I think you can tell that by different faculty and students that you talk to, engineering and your ideas of where you want to go. This is an experiential process. It's something that you experience, you go through, you learn from, you identify with, you connect with. And to borrow Dr. Spedding's term earlier, it's what do you like to think about? And what sounds interesting to you as you're working on those? What are the projects you want to work on? And we also are going to be doing an astronautical engineering faculty roundtable that will be on October 15th. You go to viterbi.live/faculty to sign up for that as well, and then hear from both and compare for your own ideas. And when it comes to the admission process, you're not locking yourself in. You have flexibility in this process. So choose the one that sounds the coolest to you now. You can start taking classes when you get there. If you decide that's not right for you, you switch. And students are switching between aerospace, mechanical, and astro all the time. It's a very fluid process. So don't worry too much about this process. There's no level of that. And that's another question that I just answered from our Q&A, which is, can I change my major? And yes, you can. So when it comes to the admission process, just think of the one that you think sounds the coolest to you that you want to start in. If you decide that you want to switch, you can. That's why the introductory courses are right up front. Here's another really great question I thought was.
If I could,
can I just follow up on that also? First, you, Paul, you were the.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say another thing you can do is just go to the USC schedule of classes and look at the syllabi for these various ones. For AME 101, AME 105, and in astronautics, it's also called 101. Just look at the list of the subjects covered and say, oh, does that sound interesting? Well, that's one data point you can use.
And I think there's another nettle that can be grasped here. Where are the jobs? Will I get a job? Is it scary to be an aerospace engineer when Boeing is laying off many people? Is it scary to be an astronautical engineer when the satellite industry sometimes feels like it's collapsing? The aerospace and astro industries in particular have these huge cyclical variations in hiring and success in the industry. These make headlines when a firm says that they're going to lay off 10,000 people or whatever it is. What never makes the headlines is the fact that they're all the time hiring, even while they're laying people off, all the time. It's not a headline, it's not news. Boeing has to hire 30,000 new engineers in the next 4 years. How on earth are they going to do that? And that target is the same, regardless of these newspaper headlines. So you tend to see that when the newspaper headlines are scary, then people tend to go for the more conservative choice, perhaps, of mechanical engineering. When everything looks groovy, then they feel more free to branch out to aero and astro. And my message is that, once again, just do well in your classes and you'll get a job. And you might as well choose the thing that you enjoy thinking about and you'll get a job. And so don't be too put off by the headlines, because there's a lot going on that never makes the headlines.
Or as the saying goes, we always have room for a genius. Every company feels that way.
Yeah, and they want new geniuses. They want people that have done well and are thinking differently. And that's what's just to underscore all of these points. They're consistently hiring, and not one degree is more marketable than another, but a person who's successful and enjoys their degree is much more marketable than someone that doesn't. And so it's all about your success and your connection to the discipline. Thank you for those points. I really appreciate that. Arav asked this question, would you consider mechanical engineering to, and I'm going to expand this, mechanical or aerospace, to be a good complement or pair for entrepreneurial students? In other words, you know, they want to have a startup. How do you help them understand that? Yeah, the answer is yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you think about it, as if a startup is going to build something, then it's aerospace and mechanical or astronautics. If it's going to do apps or something online or software, then it's probably another type of engineering that you want. So it's more of a, is it tangible? Can you touch it? Then you're good. Because it takes an aerospace or a mechanical engineer to build something that actually flies or rolls or whichever way you want to think about the word.
Absolutely. There's another question here that I think it just jumps off of that idea of deciding between majors, and I forgot to hit it. That I just saw it again, which is can I double major in aerospace mechanical engineering? And I think first of all, the answer is yes, you can, but it's not a good plan, y'all. Usually you're asking that question because you can't decide. And I think, can I let you all jump in on this idea or of like aerospace? You wouldn't minor in mechanical engineering because a lot of those courses are already built into this. It's a pretty similar course load.
Right. Do drama or music or something like that instead.
Yeah, theater, dance, music. Yeah, do something different.
Yeah, so if you think about it and you look at the curriculum, like Paul mentioned, the differences are not large, and there's a few classes, but the big difference is this last senior capstone design type class, which you're either going to design something that flies or you're going to design something else, something that has wheels or carries or something else. But in that, that's the only difference. And if you can think about it as being minor, it's the application of it. But you need most of the same knowledge to do both, or to do either. Everyone agrees with me?
I like that. That's a great answer. Thank you. Sorry, I was reading my next question here that I wanted to ask, and Angel asked this and says, "What are some of the problems that aerospace engineers face today, such as or problems that you see coming down the pipe? Certain phenomena that are out there, concepts that you're dealing with today."
How do you build an airplane that doesn't pollute? How do you build a sustainable airplane? And that's not trivial. You can build electric cars. They're relatively simple compared to an airplane. An airplane is heavy. You can't carry that battery. How do you make it sustainable? And no one wants to stop flying. That's one big challenge for aerospace. Another big challenge is go to Mars or have systems that fly forever. How an airplane that doesn't have to come down. That's some of the ones I think of in aerospace.
I think often students forget that the idea of people think that environmental engineers are the ones that fix everything to make it cleaner. And it's like, no, we need to create new technologies that are more sustainable. And that permeates all of the disciplines. So I really appreciate you saying that.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, I try to emphasize with the students that, any engineered system, whether it's aircraft, whether it's ground vehicles, anything like that, has technical, economic, and political issues associated with it, as Hercules here knows very well. And I can only help you with one of those three. And to be honest, it's the easiest of the three. But nevertheless, this whole issue, I agree 100% with Alejandra that even for things that, aren't flying, it's all, the big challenges now are sustainability, pollution, human factors, and also just sort of acceptability is now a big thing. I mean, for example, you think about this. Suppose you just designed, there had never been a internal combustion engine fueled vehicle ever in the history of the world before. You just designed it. You just invented it. And you found a way to get this goo out of the ground and turn it into something you could put into a tank in this car, and you could go, a few hundred miles without refueling. But think about it. Then you have these many, many gallons of this explosive material that in itself is somewhat toxic, and it produces toxic products. And you're going 60 miles an hour, down the road in this thing. You think people will let you do that? No, nobody will let you do that if it was designed today. So this whole issue of acceptability is really, I think, quite an issue now as well.
Another big one is, for instance, autonomy. So cars that drive themselves, machines that do the work, airplanes that fly themselves. How do you get there? And what does it take? And how do you want to do it? is another. And sorry, I just dropped my camera. I got so excited about aerospace, but it's back now. So
all right, great.
No, I'm done.
Can we talk a little bit more about some of the design teams that are kind of involved in aerospace mechanical engineering? There's Formula, the USC racing team, the Formula style racing team, aero design team. Can we talk a little bit about their involvement and what they do?
Yeah, I'll start off with that. Both those two teams are almost professional outfits by now. The aero design team is accustomed to coming in the top 5 and very often first in a national competition to design, build and fly a new aircraft for a new mission every year. It's a competition sponsored by the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics. And we have traditionally an extraordinary team with extraordinarily good supervision from the instructors and extraordinarily broad and tight coordination, collaboration with our industrial alumni. And so there's an industrial advisory board for the design team whose members are almost as numerous as the design team themselves. And many of them come from the history of being involved in the design team, and they're working in the local aerospace companies here. And so our preliminary design reviews, the critical design reviews, become a little meet and greet for one-on-one encounters with people who are hiring in the industry. So it's a way to get practical experience. It's a way to learn how to work in teams. It's a way to do something practical, and it's a way to get yourself known outside the school. The same is true of the Formula SAE team, which has grown in success hugely in the last 3 or 4 years, and is now one of the most recognized teams in the national competition, which runs every year. Every year there's not COVID, of course. And so we're looking forward to another year of this. Well, we'll see what the rules turn out to be this year for COVID-like participation and so on. But in general, by the time next fall rolls around, I think these teams will be back in full swing, and they're an extremely potentially valuable part of your extracurricular education.
Yeah, let me just add to that a couple of things. First of all, you don't have to wait till you're a junior or senior to join these teams. You know, people join as freshmen, and I mean, they really need people to join as freshmen so that by the time they're seniors, they're really to take the lead on these things. It's not like you just jump in as a senior and all of a sudden, you can expect to be, a subsystem lead or anything like that. So that's one thing. Also, when you go for job interviews, I guarantee you, the interviewer is not going to ask about, what did you learn at AME 101 or AME 341 or any of these courses. They just say, oh, so you're on the SAE, the Formula SAE team. Oh, so what did you do? Who was your team lead? Or are you the team lead? And what did you do? What problems did you run into? They're going to be asking about that. I hear these reports back all the time, and I keep thinking, well, what are we, chopped liver? What are all those courses important? And I was, well, of course, those courses were important. Otherwise, you couldn't have done what you did in these design projects. But typically, they're going to want to ask you about, those design projects and not the underlying knowledge that you gain in the process of becoming able to participate in those design teams.
And there's a few more that we haven't mentioned. There's a solar car, there's a Hyperloop, liquid propulsion lab, rocket propulsion lab. Those tend to be associated.
Incumbent vehicle, that's right.
Incumbent vehicle design.
Yeah.
There are lots, absolutely. And I think one of the other questions was it's not limited to particular majors. Students from all majors are involved across the board. You can be an aero student working on a formula, you can be a mechanical student working on any of the others, computer science students working them, God forbid, electrical engineers.
Yeah.
Because that's at the end of the day, so there's still so many questions here that we're not going to get to you guys about, like, what's better, aero, astro, mechanical. And if you haven't heard us yet, there's no such answer to that question. No. But what's interesting also, which ties into this, which is, if you're going to create a complicated engineering solution, which is an airplane, it doesn't just take aerospace engineering students, it's aerospace and mechanical and electrical and computer scientists, material scientists, chemical engineers, all industrial and systems engineers. It's a team effort that's involved and based on collaboration. And don't worry about finding the right one. Find the thing that's right to you, that's interesting, because you're going to be on a team that's building something. Which also goes to this next question, which is how, this question. I'm going to read the question verbatim, but then I'm going to add something to it. It says, how competitive and rigorous do you say this path of aerospace and mechanical engineering may be? And I want to specify that competitive and rigorous are or should be an or topic, right? So let's talk about competitive, and then let's talk about rigorous.
So I guess my question would be in relation to what, with respect to what? Very rigorous. I mean, you can't put a car outside or have an airplane take off if it's not exactly right on. So it's very rigorous from that perspective. It's challenging because those are not easy problems.
Yeah.
And because the tools that you need to learn might be a little more complicated than you would like, but these are complicated machines. So I don't know if I'm walking around the question of
I think sometimes people wonder in the competitive part whether this is a type of program, a cutthroat program, where you'll be competing against your classmates.
Oh, you can't build an airplane alone. You can't.
Very bright fellow classmates, and you'll just get elbowed out of the way, because of course we all like the bright high achievers. But as Paul was mentioning, the two Pauls, and Alejandro has mentioned this too, it's we recognize this is a team effort. Right now in my intro to aero class, the coolest class ever, by the way, just in case.
One of two.
in that class, after the first couple of weeks, every single one of the homework assignments is a collaborative one. And that's because it's more fun. That's because it helps build a community, and we're partly about building a community of aerospace engineers. And so it's not really competitive except with yourself. You want to do the best you possibly can do. And I will be grading harshly if you don't do that. But so you measure against yourself. But you do that in collaboration with your classmates.
Yeah, if I could add something to that. I find that our students are very competitive in the sense that in the AME 101 class, the sort of distribution of scores, like on an exam, it's quite narrow. There's not that much, not that many points separating, kind of the low end of the bell curve from the high end of the bell curve. But because you all have been very carefully vetted by Paul and his staff, the other Paul and his staff, so you're all capable of doing this. The other thing I would say, so you're competitive, but I also found they're also very collaborative. I don't find people being competitive in the sense of, people trying to sabotage each other's work or hiding, what they know from others. I find it's very collaborative. And that brings up one other thing I wanted to mention, is that I was a student at 4 different universities. USC wasn't one of them. And I was at another university as a faculty member before coming to USC. Of those 5 previous institutions, none of them really had this sense of sort of family or spirit that USC has. So when I first came here in 1993, and people started talking about this Trojan family, Trojan spirit, I was like, okay, whatever. But I quickly found that it was really true. And when I'd accomplish something, people would slap me in the back and say, hey, Paul, good job, keep it up. Whereas at that other institution, whose name I won't mention, it was almost like, well, how come you got it and I didn't, kind of thing. So it's a much more sort of collaborative and family atmosphere here than some other schools.
Can we talk about your relationship with students? Oftentimes students are worried about this movie version of faculty that are, that they're scary. They've got this curve, and they're only going to let 10 people pass the class. And how connected do you feel students are to faculty? I know the answer, but I want to make sure you're chiming in here.
Let me so about the curve, I always tell my students, especially the ones who are about to graduate in aerodynamics, I want to give everyone an A. That would be my success. And so I take it personally. Is if you want to learn and I can't give you that, then there's something wrong with the way we're teaching it. And so I think it's about being accessible, and we're not a huge university. We don't have 10,000 undergrads or 2,000 undergrads in aerospace and mechanical engineering. And so you get to know us. We have a new building now where we're all sitting next to each other. You can go and knock on doors. We have office hours regularly, 2-3 hours a week, where people who are not taking your class will just come up and ask a question. I have a lot of people coming and asking questions about the student groups. So they're designing this part of the car and they need some aerodynamic advice. And so we feel like it's us, like it's like we're the family. I guess it's back to Paul's Trojan family idea.
And I could just add that if we've learned nothing else from the times of COVID, then I think we've learned the importance of human interactions. And our department has always valued human interactions. And I maintain stubbornly that it's possible to be both an engineer and a human. And that I strongly encourage the human part of our personality to not get submerged, but to persist. It's good for all of us in the end. And so that's the kind of place that we are, and determinedly so.
Yeah, I would just add to that, as Alejandra mentioned, we all have office hours. Use those office hours. Believe me, there is nothing that any faculty member would like more than for you to come in and talk about just something that's of interest to you that we know about. We'd love to tell you about that. Even if, of course, we expect that we're going to talk to students and tell them how to do problem 3 on the homework and all that, and that's fine. But sometimes if there's a week that homework isn't due, I just love for students to come in, and even if they're not in my class, and ask me questions about anything whether it be, space or cars or energy or blowing up stuff, anything they want to know. We're more than happy to tell them. And that's true across the university, not just here. I think that the most underutilized resource on campus is faculty members' office hours. Every faculty member must have them. Whatever you're interested in, there's somebody on campus who's an expert in that. Go talk to them about it.
And if I could share my perspective from the outside looking in, I know all these faculty members, they know all their students, the students know them, they have relationships with them, they get to know them. And that's mostly because of our size. It's a small space, and they care about our students. That's another important part about teaching at USC. Is somewhat of a requirement. You have to care about your students. There's many other schools you can go to where you don't have to care about your students and focus on other elements. And I'll actually point out the negative side of that, if I could, for a second, which is I think this was a computer science faculty member, if I remember correctly, but I was in the cafe just chatting it up, getting some lunch, and the faculty member I was chatting with, and then all of a sudden he turned around and saw one of his students and said, "Oh, hey, John," I'll keep his identity secret. "John, didn't see you in class this morning. Is everything okay?" It's not this large public institution where you disappear into a large lecture hall. Faculty notice when you're not there. And so be wary of good student-faculty interactions, I guess I should say. Now, we're going to have to start wrapping up. I got a few more questions that we'll be able to pull from. There's a lot of them here, but I wanted to make sure you all know there's a good number of questions from you all that are related to admission and the application process and what do we look for. And I love all those questions. But that is a great thing to ask us during our admission info sessions that we have 3 times a week. And so you can go to, I put it in the chat, which is viterbi.live/events. We have admission information sessions where you can speak to us directly. We'll get to all of those questions in that area. And it's really important, specifically how to apply to the engineering school, how to apply to USC. And it's also on our website, which is viterbiadmission.usc.edu, which we've been dropping links in there all the time. One question I think that's great for our faculty as we start to wrap up is, what is the distinction of taking aerospace mechanical engineering at USC versus other engineering schools that are equally great?
I guess one thing I would say, the obvious thing that Paul just mentioned is our size. We are smaller than most. We have about 125, 130 students in freshmen every year in mechanical and aerospace combined. There are, you go to, I don't want to mention any names, but the schools that are very large, and they'll have many hundreds just in mechanical or just in aerospace every year. So one thing that's I think makes us different is our size. I think also one thing that makes us somewhat unique is sort of this really tight emphasis on the fundamentals, not just the fundamentals, but also applying these fundamentals and also getting students involved in these either team projects or the design projects, the aero design, Formula SAE, liquid propulsion, rocket lab, etc. So I'd say those things makes us kind of special. But again, more than anything else, I think I'd still come back to this one thing about the Trojan family.
Yeah. I think I would agree with Paul on that. You can go to a very good place and there's many students and no one knows who you are and everything is based on a curve and there's always a bell shape at the end, and here you're not going to disappear among the masses, and we're not just curving. And as I said, give you everyone an A if everyone deserves an A. And so it's not about competing with your peers, it's about learning from your peers and being part of a family, which I think is what makes us special. And the size, I wouldn't say we're tiny, I think we're a good size. We're the good size where professors can know everyone, but where there's enough people that you kind of have the diversity and the experience and the peer and the teams and all those aspects are also as important as just the math and the physics and the equations.
And then I have three things that I think are important: location, location, location. So we're in Los Angeles, which is undoubtedly the center of the universe, and it's certainly the center of the aerospace engineering universe. It's the undisputed center of the aerospace engineering brains universe. This is where the designers live. This is where they operate. This is where they come and teach classes to our graduate students. This is where they come as invited lecturers to my class. And this is where you get internships. This is where you get jobs. And finally, this is where there's beautiful beaches.
And I think it's also, we haven't mentioned it enough, maybe, there are instructors or part-time faculty who actually teach, and they work in the companies, in the industry. So our capstone design class about aircraft design is taught by 3 engineers at Boeing who design aircraft. And I think that's also one of our pluses, and it part is because of where we are, because they're just half an hour drive and not half the country away.
I have one last question for you from our audience, and then we'll use this as our closer. Why did you choose to become faculty and not necessarily work in industry?
Okay,
I enjoyed the teaching and the interaction with the students and the research part. And so that's why I'm a faculty. I want to keep teaching and keep learning. That was my take on it. And we can still work with industry and do other things.
Yeah, I was going to say that actually when I finished my PhD, I didn't expect to be, anywhere near university ever again. But I realized, first of all, that all the research, I'd been bitten by the research bug, because I love the idea of taking a blank sheet of paper and creating a body of knowledge that never exists. Even some of the work that I did as a PhD student probably would still not, that knowledge would not exist had I not done it. Anyway, but then, so I realized, where are the great researchers that I respect, whose work I build on, and almost always at universities. But then when I got to the university, then I realized, well, I really like it. At first I thought of teaching as this kind of, well, this is one of these things that I have to do. But then I realized I really like working with the students. And now, especially as I've gotten older, I found that my peers and we used to, when we were younger, we always talked about our research. Now we get together with my peers, we're always talking about our new educational innovations. And that's one of the reasons I'm here right now.
That's great.
Yeah, for me, it's very simple. I like finding out new things. And that's one of the funnest, best things for me. And as an independent researcher, you can find out new things that nobody knew before. And you can direct your research towards interesting places on your own. And the second thing is, which both Paul and Alejandro have mentioned now, is it turns out that it's just as fun to be sharing that excitement and knowledge with others. And the others include the students, who increasingly are part of the investigation.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate it. I want to be mindful and respectful of everybody's time. I really appreciate it. Dr. Rani, Dr. Uranga, Dr. Spedding, thank you for joining us and representing the department today and speaking to our prospective students. I know there were a ton of questions we didn't get to. You can always feel free to email us at vadmit@usc.edu. I think a number of you really should attend one of our admission information sessions because there's a lot of questions related to the application and the admission process, and we can dive into those further. Plus, we have some of our current students in each one of those events. Those are going on for first-year students Tuesdays and Thursday afternoons, and some Saturdays as well. For our transfer students, we have those on every other Friday afternoon. So there's plenty of information for you to get out there. Plus, check out viterbi.live/events for other faculty sessions. A number of you asked about astronautical engineering. That will be on October, I think 15th, I said, and plenty more things to do and learn about the program. The application deadline is December 1st to be considered for merit-based scholarships for first-year students, and February 1st for transfer students. So again, thank you everyone for joining us. I would love to keep you all on and say goodbye after we close up, but once I hit end, it's going to say goodbye. But the one thing that I really appreciate about this session is at least now I'm not the only horse's ass on screen. We thank you, Dr. Ronnie, for bringing a few others.
Yeah, Cavalier and Hercules say goodbye as well.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Goodbye. Thanks.
Awesome, and thanks again for our third faculty roundtable of this fall. As I said previously, I think these are great conversations. There's so much insight to be gained when we're thinking at sort of a higher level, and the professors, have that to offer, as well as some fun stories too. So definitely continue to tune into these as we release them.
Yeah, this, as Audrey said, this is the third one. We've got a number of other episodes coming down your way. We're going to be going with BME next, and we got astronautical engineering, which some of you may want to know more about the differences between aerospace, mechanical, and astronautical engineering. We talked a little bit about that in this episode, but coming up next week, we'll have a whole episode with our astronautical engineering faculty. This is all about helping you all learn more about the disciplines. And so make sure you check them all out, and also recognize that when you apply to the engineering school at USC, you are not locked into your discipline. When you're filling that out on the application, you want to list one of the Viterbi School majors as your first choice major, but recognize it doesn't change your chances of admission, and you are not locked into that program. We build our programs on flexibility. Right now, you're just trying to decide what sounds the coolest to you and what's the most interesting to you so you can get started. So I hope that these episodes are helping. And if you have any other questions for us before you get your application in, make sure you reach out to us. You can email us at vadmit@usc.edu, or you can call us at 213-600-9919. We are answering our phones and our mobile numbers as we're all working from home, and that rings on our mobile lines. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time with more of these faculty episodes.